Hi everyone, my name is Wagner Maldonado, and in today's video I will be discussing and sharing with you how to use Freytag's pyramid as a strategy to problem solve the issues in understanding a story's plot structure. To start with this discussion, I would like to delve with what a plot is. And plot is the literary element that describes the structure of a story. So it shows how events and actions occur within a story. Simply put, it's a way to understand how a story develops from beginning to end. Now, coming into the meaning of the Freytag pyramid, this is a pyramid used that has 5 main parts to describe a story plot structure. So for this we can use a visual representation which shows how stories can be constructed, and each part has a specific role in shaping the story's development. Say for instance, the 5 main parts are the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. So this is a Freytag's pyramid strategy. It was developed by Gustav Freytag. This was a German novelist and playwright in the mid-19th century. So in this case, we'll be using Freytag's pyramid as a pre-writing strategy because sometimes students do not understand the different structures that are intertwined in writing, and because they do not understand the plot in a story, it becomes a difficult task for students to proceed with writing their stories and being creative with writing. So hence the reason now we'll be delving into Freytag's pyramid strategy for you to understand plot structure and for you to be a creative thinker and writer, and for your stories to flow with its plot. So for this occasion we will be reading the story The Three Little Pigs. So using this story we will be delving into the Freytag pyramid strategy step by step. So while reading the story The Three Little Pigs, I will be demonstrating to you how to go about using the Freytag pyramid strategy for your pre-writing issues to being solved. The story starts, the three little pigs. Once upon a time, 3 little pigs decided to leave their mother's home and build their own houses. They each set out to find materials and build a home in a peaceful countryside, where the 3 pigs decided to make their own houses that would protect them from the dangers of the world, especially the big bad wolf who lived nearby. The first pig, eager to finish quickly, built his house out of straw. It was easy to find and took little effort. The second pig, wanting a bit more stability, constructed his house out of sticks. It took a little bit more work, but it was still relatively quick to complete. The third pig, determined to build a sturdy home, chose to use bricks. It was a lot of hard work and took the longest, but he was confident it would be worth the effort. So at the back here we have the completed Freytag pyramid strategy, but as we read the story, as I previously mentioned, I will be showing you how you reach this end product to understand the pre-writing strategy. So let's think about the exposition now. Remember, exposition is the first part in the Freytag's pyramid, followed by the rising action and then the climax. So with the exposition, we have an introductory part of the story. We want to understand here the essential background information in the story, specifically who the characters are and what would be the setting of the story. So that is the main focus, and mostly we can find the exposition of a story in the very first paragraph of the story. So going back to the story, we want to understand, based on what we've read, that the characters of the story would be the 3 little pigs and the big bad wolf. And now the setting, based on the story, would be based in a peaceful countryside. And inclusive of the exposition of the story, we want to include that the 3 little pigs decided to build their own homes. So this basically gives an introduction to a story. So that is how we start most of the time the story, with a catchy introduction where we introduce the characters and we introduce the setting of the story. So that is basically what the exposition of the story is, which you can now utilize this to delve into writing and write your creative projects and pieces of writing. So moving on to the rising action now, we want to refer to events. Events. The rising action includes events. So here, exposition, we go to the events. The events going to the climax. So these events, we want to focus these events in different conflicts. Not only conflicts, but different crises in the story that lead to a climax. So when we understand, let's understand climax first. Climax would be a turning point of the story, a point where we don't know if the end result would be for good or for bad. So now going back to the rising action, understanding what the climax is, we now want to delve into elements or actions that would take you to a climax, which is the turning point of the story. So for instance, in the story, in what we have already read, we can identify some of the rising actions that will take you to a turning point of the story. So based on the second paragraph in specific, we're now aware that the first 3 pointers that are part of the rising action would be the first big, building the house of straw. This is the easiest and quickest way to build a house. The second big builds out of sticks. This is a little stronger, but not really much durable. It is not a durable way to build a house. Now the third pig, though a little smarter and clever, he builds with bricks. So in the story we can understand that later on that it takes the most time to build, but at the same time it is the sturdiest house. So based on this first and second paragraph, we can already identify completely the exposition, and now the second paragraph takes us to the first 3 points in the rising action. Let's continue reading the story now. So one day, a big bad wolf came to the straw house and with a menacing grin, remember this is the same bad wolf from the beginning of the story which they were running from, with a menacing grin, huffed and puffed until the house collapsed. So this is with the straw house. The first pig ran to his brother's stick house for safety. On the third, the wolf followed and huffed and puffed again, blowing down the stick house. Both pigs then fled to their brother's brick house, hoping it would withstand the wolf's strength. So these other elements in the third paragraph now can take us to understand other elements that are of conflict within the first part of the story. So moving on to the fourth event in the rising action would be the wolf blowing down the first pig's house, which is the straw house. Then the fifth element would be the bad wolf blowing down the stick house. And then the sixth element in the rising action is the bad wolf not being able to blow the house. Have you reached here? So continuing now with the story, let's read. The wolf arrived at the brick house and tried to blow it down, but no matter how hard he huffed and puffed, the house stood strong. Frustrated and furious, the wolf decided to climb down the chimney to get inside. The third pig, ever resourceful, quickly set up a pot of boiling water in the fireplace. So in this extra paragraph now, we can identify the last event in the rising action, which would be the bad wolf can blow down the brick house. So because of this then, and it being the third pig and last pig in the story, what will the wolf do as a turning point in the story, and how will it change the course of the story? So that is now, we are reaching now the climax with that. So the climax would be, as previously mentioned, the turning point of the story. So it can be an intense moment, either in action or how a character feels. So by now we already understand that the wolf successfully has blown down the straw house, the stick house, and now he wants to force himself into the brick house. So what would be the climax of the story? So based on what we have read now, what would be the climax of the story? So the climax of the story would be the wolf getting frustrated and climbing down the chimney. So based on the action of the wolf in this story, this could go either good or bad for the story, for him, and it could change the whole fate of the wolf in the story and also the fate of the 3 little pigs. So let's delve more into the story and see how the following action proceeds and how the following action develops and what the resolution or conclusion would be. So understanding the following action, these are events that occur after the climax. So we already know the climax is a wolf climbing down the chimney. So this is the climax. We are at a very intricate part of the story where we don't know what will happen next. So the following action would be the different events that would take us to a resolution and to a conclusion of the story. So let's finish reading the last part of the short story then of the Three Little Pigs. So it reads, as the wolf slid down the chimney, he fell straight into the pot of boiling water, scalding himself. He leaped out of the pot and ran away, never to bother the three little pigs again. From that day on, the three little pigs lived happily ever after in their sturdy brick house, knowing that hard work and determination had kept them safe. The following action would then be the wolf falling into the boiling pot over fire, and he scalds himself. So this is going to we're reaching now the last part of the story, what it ends up being after the turning point of the story. What happens next? The bad wolf ran away. So that will be the last part then of the following action. And in the end, out of all the story plot, what would be the resolution? Out of all the conflict present within the story, the three little pigs lived happily ever after in the brick house. So that would be the resolution. That would be when we think about the resolution, we think about the conclusion of the story. The resolution provides a sense of closure, a sense of ending to the whole issues that happen within the story. So we understand here now that the wolf was not so clever. The wolf was, even though it was strong and bad, he was not so clever as he fell into his own fate of running away and burning himself. So in essence, this is a Freytag's pyramid strategy. So now concluding with the Freytag's pyramid strategy, we understand the fact that the 5 parts of this strategy, which is to understand plus structure, would be the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and in the end, the resolution. So in the end, by following this Freytag's pyramid strategy as a pre-writing strategy, we're able to understand with stories that we're already familiar with how plot structure is within a story and how events flow within a story and how characters also act within a story. We can now address our problem, and what would have been the problem with this strategy is that sometimes we are not too familiar with how plot works in a story, and hence the reason we're unable to understand how events of a story develop. And because we are unable to identify how plot structures and different events in a story are identified as and in a pyramid, in a writing strategy pyramid, then it is a little too hard for us to get into writing, for us to be creative with ideas, and for us to be able to, in the end, understand different stories. So students, we're coming now to the end of this presentation, to the end of this video, and this problem-solving strategy is the Freytag pyramid strategy. I really hope that this video helps you with understanding plot structure, and I hope that understanding this plot structure helps you to write clearly and fluently and creatively in the future. Thank you so much for watching and staying till the end.